and welcome to another lawnfawn video. Today we are so excited to be introducing our brand new dies, Stitch Sun Frame and Outside In Stitch Sun. We are also going to be introducing our brand new Sunburst backdrop too. One of the things that I love about all of these dies is they all work great on their own and they all work great together. You can see that opening size there is the exact same size on all three of these dies. Guess what else it's the exact same size as? The Magic Iris. So you can mix and match all of these products with the Magic Iris, which is so cool. And so we're going to be showing you how to use these guys separately and together in this video. Right here is the Sunburst backdrop, and you can see that it does these beautiful embossed rays and stitched rays. You can see how gorgeous that is. I'm going to turn it to the side so you can really see that embossed detail. It's so pretty. Then next up, I have a comparison here between the Outside In Sun and the Stitch Sun frame. So in the Outside In Sun, it does an outside in detail, which means there's stitching on the outside of the opening and then stitching on the die cut that it creates. It also comes with this cute little tiny sun too. So here you can see that main die cut that it creates that has stitching. It also has a stitch circle for the center, and then there's an opening that has stitching along the outside, thus the outside in detail. The cool thing is you can use the opening on its own or the die cut on its own, or you can inlay them together, and look how beautiful that looks when you inlay them with contrasting colors. Now, the other really cool thing is that the Stitch Sun frame is the same size. That means that you can take the frame and you can inlay that into the same outside in opening. So that's really cool, and I love this frame because it's got those cool little kind of triangular details. You can also layer these two pieces together, so you can kind of offset them like that or stack them together, and that's going to add color into those cool little interior triangles. So once again, they work great on their own and you can mix and match them. You can also mix and match the openings. So the one with the Stitch Sun frame does not have a stitching detail, and the one with the outside in frame does. So you can either have one with a plain detail or a stitching depending on what look you're going for. Now in the Stitch Sun frame, it includes this super cute little smiley face, which you can layer once again on either the opening with the stitching or the plain opening too. And the smiley face is absolutely adorable. So you can die cut that from the opening, or sometimes I'll actually just lay the eyes and the mouth on top of the circle. And I'll be showing you that later on in the video. So here's what it looks like die cut from both the plain circle and the stitch circle. And then there's cute little cheek blushes there. I love cutting these out of ballet slipper cardstock, and you can layer those onto those cute little smiley faces. And here's a look at what the sun looks like when you layer the pieces over, and I just adore how this looks. I think it's so cute, so fun, and just so happy, the idea of this little sun smiling at you. We're going to create 4 different cards in this video, and first up, Shari is going to use that Sunburst backdrop in a really cool, kind of graphic, colorful way. So take it away, Shari.
So for this card, I am going to be inking up the new Sunburst backdrop. So this die cuts these little stitching lines, and it also cuts some score lines in between them. And I'm going to be using those as a guide to mask off this background and do some inking on these sun rays. So I'm just using Post-it note tape. I've just cut my background from some Nina cardstock. I would suggest you use whatever you like best for ink blending. And I'm going to start out with worn lipstick. So I'm just putting this ink on a little bit darker towards the center where that opening is cut, out to a bit lighter at the edges. And that is the inking method I'm going to try with all the colors that I use today. I'm just tapping it off on my craft sheet there just so I don't get too much ink. It's a lot easier to add ink, but it's really hard to take it away. So I'm just tapping a little bit off so I don't have too much to begin with. And then when you peel off the tape, you get this nice clean edge where that color is. So I'm going to move on to the next color, which is going to be an orange color. So again, I'm using those score lines, which are kind of hard to see on camera, as my guide to where to put my tape. And then I'm moving on to the next color, which is Wild Honey. That's what I'm using for my orange. So for this background, I used 6 different colors, a rainbow of colors, and I made 2 rays of each color. So that's 12 total, and actually each of them is 2 sun rays that are cut into the background. So there's really 24 different rays. If you really wanted to get crazy, you could do a whole bunch of sun rays around. So I'm not going to quite stay in order here because when this ink is on there and it's a little bit damp, sometimes the tape has a hard time sticking. So I'm moving on to my blue color. For this one, I'm using peacock feathers. And I did cut a scrap piece of paper with this background dye first to kind of figure out where I wanted my colors. So I do have that sitting off to the side, so I know that if I go ahead and skip the yellow and green, this is where the peacock should show up. Now I'm moving on to wilted violet for the purple color. Again, tapping that excess off and working my way from the center out so that it's a little bit darker towards the middle. Now for the yellow, I'm going to use squeezed lemonade. And in hindsight, I probably should have started with this because it's the lightest color, but luckily that Post-it note tape is absorbent enough to where none of that color seems to be transferring onto my yellow. So if you are at all concerned about colors transferring, you can just use clean Post-it note tape between each color that you're putting down. And then finally, for my last color, I'm using Twisted Citron for the green panels. This would also be fun in just 2 colors, kind of like a peppermint or a circus tint kind of look, just alternating the 2 colors, or even just a color and white. I think that would be fun. So now that I've got all my color on, I'm also going to add some shimmer and shine with some gold watercolor splatters across the background. And then I'm also going to add some white metallic splatters as well. I like to add 2 different colors when I do splatters like this on the background because I think it gives it a lot more interest and depth. I just love all that shimmer and shine from those metallic watercolors. So for my sentiment, I'm going to be stamping the happy birthday from the Magic Messages stamp set. And I have put my cream colored card base along with my background that I just created into my Misty. And I'm going to stamp this sentiment down in some River Rock ink. So this is a gray ink that is Copic friendly. And then I'm just going in and I'm coloring in those open letters in the word happy with some Copic markers in the colors that match my background. So I'm just coloring them in rainbow order, and then I'm actually going to add the purple into those little details that you see on the left and right of the word happy. Now before I glue all this together, I wanted to kind of fill this in a little bit, and one of my favorite things to use are these Puffy Cloud frame die cuts. So I've just cut these out of some white cardstock and I'm just arranging them where I want them to be. I like that they hang over the sides of the card. I love that they kind of add the cloud to look sort of like the sky, but yet they're not solid, so you can still see all those pretty colors and those watercolor splatters through them. And once I've got all these in place where I want them, I'll just trim off the parts of the clouds that are overhanging the edge of this panel. So I'm just going to carefully trim off those pieces. And then we'll have a finished panel to go on the front of the card. So I thought it would be fun to kind of pop this up so that you had some dimension between the panel and the sentiment that's in that center circle. So I've added a bunch of foam tape to my background, and then I'm just going to line it up with my card base. You can see that sentiment's perfectly placed since I used my panel as a guide when I stamped it. And then here is that bright rainbow finished card, and I just think it is so lovely, especially with those shimmery metallic splatters.
Now that Shari has created that cool graphic card with the sunburst, I'm going to create a scene with this guy, and I'm going to be recreating a gorgeous card by Audrey. Oh my gosh, I just love it. And she did this beautiful inking. So I've taken that sun backdrop there, and I'm going to put some tumble glass, just some blue ink along the edges, and then I'm going to go up from the center with yellow and orange, creating a sun. And I'm also going to make sure I ink that stitch circle opening that the sunburst backdrop creates, because I'm going to end up inlaying that to the center. So now we'll take some orange ink and blend that out so we get this really cool sunset look. So I'll go back and forth between the orange and the yellow to really get a nice seamless blend. To get our scene look, we're going to be using one of my favorite dies of all time, and that's the Stitched Hillside backdrop. I love this so much. We're going to be using it in the portrait style, and we've die cut it from some craft cardstock, and we'll use some brown ink, some gathered twigs here, and we're just going to ink that on. And this is going to become sand, so we're going to kind of ink up and darken just the bottom edges, and then the craft will just become the frame for the card. So we're going to ink that up really well, and then we're going to do some splatters to kind of add some interest and really make it look like sand. So I'm going to smear that same exact ink onto my mat, add a little bit of water, mix it up with a paintbrush, and I'll tap my paintbrush to get cool little splatters that are going to give the appearance of sand. Now, I really love with sand to do kind of a darker brown splatter and then to do a white splatter. And there's something about that that really kind of gives it that beachy feel. So I'm going to use some white ink here. This is some Copic white, but white acrylic paint would work. This is just what I happen to have. And I'm going to mix it with a little water and once again tap the paintbrush to create cool splatters on my card. Here I've die cut some palm tree tops out of Cilantro ink, and even though they look really nice cut out of the cardstock, I wanted to make sure they blended well into the scene. So we're going to add a little bit of green ink to the edges. This is Mowed Lawn ink, and that's just going to make them look ink blended and look more like our background that we created. Here I have the Car Critter stamp set and the brand new Tiny Friend stamp set, and these guys are a great match. So I went ahead and stamped, colored, and die cut a cute little car and then some tiny friends, and we're going to add them into the car. And look how cute this is. They're the perfect size for this little car. I cannot get over how adorable this look is. I love that you can use them with that car. So right now we're going to cut down a card base here that's going to be 5.5 by 4.25, and we're going to start forming some of our scene. We'll layer on that sunburst backdrop and also inlay the sun, the center part of the backdrop, in there to help create a seamless blend of our sky. And then we're going to start layering on some ocean waves. So I have my ocean wave border dies here, and we're going to die cut some rainforest cardstock, and then we're going to layer them behind that backdrop we created. And as I layer them behind it, I'm going to kind of put them kind of at angles there because I wanted to have the ocean waves just look perfect behind it, and then I can just trim off any of the excess. To help finish up the scene, we're going to use the Puffy cloud frames, and I love these cute little frames because they add the appearance of clouds without adding a lot of bulk, so we can still see our cool ink blended sky and that really awesome sunburst backdrop die. So I've die cut a bunch of these, and I'm going to add some liquid glue on the back with some glue tube, and then we're going to layer them onto the card, and you'll see just how cute these look overlaying that sun. It just really creates and kind of blends the whole thing into our scene that we're creating. Next, I'll just trim off the top of that card that was hanging off the edge, and we can start to layer our scene together. So we're going to take our sandy backdrop and layer that on top, and then die cut some palm tree trunks out of ground coffee cardstock and start to layer those on the scene. And I'll make sure to tuck some behind that sandy hill. I think that looks really, really cool. Next, I've added some foam tape behind those palm tree tops, and we're going to layer those onto our palm trees. Then we can add that cute card critter's card with the tiny friends with some foam squares on the back, and we're going to layer that into this cute beach scene. And oh my goodness, how adorable is this? Now, one of the things I love that Audrey did is she added a bunch of white gel pen details, and I really like that look because I feel like it gives it kind of a fun cartoony feel. So I'm just adding some little curved lines all around the edges of the palm trees and on the trunks and on the sun. And then we're going to stamp our sentiment. And in the card cutter stamp set, there's the sentiment "I'd be lost without you," which is so cute and sweet. So I die cut a sentiment banner out of some white cardstock. We're going to stamp in black licorice ink, layer some foam squares behind, and then put that onto the scene. And then we can trim off any of the excess. And then the card is all done. I love using the Sunburst backdrop as a scene creator, and I love the graphic way that Shari used it. It's just such a cool die. Now, next up, it's time to make a shaker card with this. And so to make the shaker card, I'm going to make a cool little guide here that's going to help me create some of the shaker pieces. So we're just going to trim off all of the triangles, leaving ourselves with this kind of stitch circle shape. And this is going to be our guide. The first thing we need to do is cut our acetate for the window. So I have a piece of acetate here, and I'm just going to take a Sharpie and just draw around this guide that I've created. It doesn't matter how it looks because that part's going to get trimmed off. So I'm just going to kind of go right around it. And then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to trim along the inside of that line. So we're just going to trim right along the inside, and this can be nice and messy. It doesn't have to be perfect. No one's ever going to see what this looks like. Next, we need a cardstock base for the shaker, and we're going to do the same exact thing. So I'm just tracing that same guide that we created with my pen, and then I'm just going to messily trim it out. Once again, this just took me seconds. All I have to do is just go around kind of messy around the inside of that pen line. Now we have our base and we have our window, so now we need our sun frame. So I'm going to die cut a ton of these. I think it's about 8 of them out of the, this is sticky note cardstock, which is a perfect sun color. We're going to use our glue tube and we're going to add glue all around the whole thing, and we're going to start to layer and stack all of these pieces. And by stacking these pieces up, we're going to create a cool well for our shaker pieces to move about in. Another option that you could do is you could die cut a piece of fun foam. So that's a really fun way to create a shaker with this as well. So you can die cut that fun foam craft stuff in the kids section, die cut that, and then layer that piece, and that would quickly give you your well. For some reason, I really like stacking the cardstock pieces. There's just something like kind of meditative about it. I just love it. So now I'm going to take that base piece that we freehand cut. I'm going to add some glue right around that inside edge, and then we're going to layer our whole stacked up piece of suns together. Then we can start to layer our little shaker bits inside. So I like using little sequins and little gems and little things. I just kind of went through my stash, saw what I could find, and I'm going to add a bunch of kind of clear shaker pieces inside this. Then our next step is going to be to layer our acetate on. And to layer on the acetate, I like to use nice strong tape. So I'm going to use the 1/8 inch double-sided tape, and I'm going to go all the way around in a circle right along the edge there of that opening. Then we can just peel up the liner paper and we can attach the acetate piece down. Once we attach the acetate piece down, then we're going to repeat the same thing with that strong 1/8 inch double-sided tape. We're just going to go all the way around the acetate piece, and then we're going to layer the frame on top, and that's just going to give it a nice finished look. I'm also going to make sure to add some glue tube to the triangular parts of the sun so that there's a nice strong hold. And you'll see as we layer this together, it's going to create this perfect, gorgeous kind of finished look. Now this sun is great just like this, but I love a smiley face. So we're going to add a smiley face to this guy. And one of my favorite ways to add a smiley face is to layer the pieces on top. So first thing I'm going to do is create a guide. So I've die cut my little smiley face there out of some white cardstock, and I'm just going to trim right around the smiley face. And this is going to help me add my eyes and my smile onto my sun in perfect placement. So I can just add some glue and then drop those little eyes into my guide. And then I'll do the same thing with the smile. So I'm adding a little bit of glue on there, and then I'm going to drop that smile in, and then I can peel up my little guide that I die cut, and now those eyes and smile are in perfect placement. You could also just eyeball it, pun intended, but I like things to be exact, so I use that little guide there. Now I'm going to layer on those cute little cheeks cut from ballet slipper cardstock, and I mean, look at that little sun. I could just look at him all day. Now I went ahead and die cut that Sunburst backdrop out of some sunflower cardstock, and I'm going to trim 1/8 of an inch off of all of the edges because I want there to be some pattern paper behind it. And doesn't that look pretty? I really love doing that. So we'll add some tape runner to that whole thing and then layer it onto this really rainbow paper. This is from the 6x6 pad. Next, we're going to take the Puffy Cloud border die and we're going to die cut some white cardstock that's the same size as that Sunburst backdrop that we trimmed down. And these white puffy clouds are going to look so cute, kind of covering up that bottom. Now, I wasn't sure how tall to make them and I made them a little bit too tall. So I'm kind of just looking to see what would look nice. I'm going to make a little pencil line and then I can trim off of the excess and then add some tape runner to those clouds and layer them onto the scene. I've die cut some stitch clouds to add towards the top of the scene, and one of them will be a full cloud, but the other one I wanted it to look like it was kind of coming off of the page. So I'm just going to trim off the side of it and then layer that onto the card. I loved how Tammy's sentiment was so bold. She white heat embossed on black cardstock. So I've got some black cardstock. I'm adding my anti-static powder tool, and then we're going to stamp a sentiment from all the clouds, which I love this set so much, and this is my favorite, the Sending Sunshine. It's so cute. We'll stamp that in some nice, clear, sticky embossing ink, and then we can add some white heat embossing powder, heat it up with the heat tool, and then we're going to trim it out with our trimmer, just having it be the exact size again as that Sunburst backdrop that we trimmed down. I'll layer that with tape runner right along those clouds, and then we're going to add some tape runner to the back of that cute little sun shaker and layer it into the scene. And I love making a shaker with these dies. It's adorable. I love adding the smiley face, and that Sunburst backdrop in the background just kind of makes the whole thing, because I love seeing those rays come out from the sun. So I love how well they work together. We're going to layer this onto a standard size card base that's 5.5 by 4.25, and our card is all done. It's an adorable shaker. It's so sweet and cute. I just love this layout so much, and it's so fun to play around with it and shake those little bits inside that sunshine. Next up, we're going to create a magic iris using both the Sunburst and these cool sun dies. So we're going to die cut our Sunburst backdrop out of some spiffy speckles paper. This is in the Ripe Banana style. And then we're going to take the magic iris add-on. So this add-on, as you can see, has the same size opening as the opening on the Sunburst die. And so we're just going to line that right up. I'm going to line up the opening and line it up with that cover plate. We're going to use some Post-it note tape to hold it in place. We'll run it through the die cut machine, and now we're going to have a magic iris cover plate that's going to have that cool, awesome sunburst detail to it. Next, we're going to do some quick inking. So I have some sunflower ink here, and we're going to start in the middle of this sun and then go to the edges. And so we want the area to be darkest around the center, and then it's going to kind of go out into white. Because we're inking up some spiffy speckles paper, it's already got these cool splatters on it that already gives it that fun kind of inky, distressy look. Now it's time to make the magic iris part of this card. So I went ahead and die cut all the pieces, and we're going to take one of the rings and we're going to use our awesome flux capacitor looking piece here. We're going to line it up with the center of the ring, run it through the die cut machine, and now we're going to have those awesome little openings ready to go. I've die cut 3 of these sausage looking pieces out of some sticky note cardstock, and we're going to put those into those openings. So we're just going to kind of put them right to the end and then line it up so that they're all lined up with that inside circle of our magic iris. Then we're going to take some glue dots, and these are the mini glue dot size, and we're going to attach those glue dots to those little X's that the die created for us. So it's a little X marks the spot, and we're going to add one glue dot to each of those X's. Once we have the glue dots in placement, we can make sure that our sausage pieces are lined up with our ring. So we're going to line up the curve of that piece with the inside curve of our ring. Once they're in good placement, I can kind of hold them there with my fingers and layer another one of the rings on top, securing them down onto those glue dots. Then we're going to flip this entire ring over, and we're going to take a look at the back, and you'll see there's these little kind of stitched rectangles there. That's guide for where to put our adhesive. So we're going to start at those rectangles and go to the outside edge, putting some tape runner right down in a line. And then we're going to take our stabilizer pieces and line those up right on the adhesive, lining it up once again with that stitch detail that the die created for us. Once all 3 are on, we can flip over our ring, and then we're going to add the tab piece. So we're going to add a little bit of tape runner about 1/3 to half of the way down, and then we're going to line that up right with the edge, creating a V shape between the stabilizer and that tab piece. And the tab's going to go to the right of that stabilizer. Then we're going to add some tape runner to each of those pieces, and we're going to lay one of the rings on top, and that ring is going to be completely loose. And then we're going to take those stabilizer pieces and wrap them around that ring, securing it in place. As you wrap these pieces around, you're going to notice they're not going all the way to the inside edge. That's good. We want to make sure that these guys aren't too tight so that our magic iris can still move. And now we can test it out and look at that. How cool is that? So it's moving and looking great. And now we can start to work on attaching it to our cover plate that we were working on earlier. So I'm going to add some tape runner all to the front of my magic iris. And this right here was the moment where I realized I hadn't added my decorative tab yet. So I die cut the tab out of that same spiffy speckles paper and then inked it with that same sunflower ink. I'm going to add some tape runner to the back of it, and then we can layer that onto the tab. Once that's layered on, we're going to take our scissors and we're going to cut off any of the excess of that white cardstock. And this is going to give that tab the unique shape that it needs to have for the magic iris add-on. I'll add some more tape runner to the front of that ring, and then we can line it up with that magic iris add-on Sunburst combo we've been working on. So I'm going to line up both the openings, and I'm also going to make sure that that tab is nice and straight along the outside edge of that rectangle. So it's going to kind of complete that rectangle. Then we can push down, securing the magic iris mechanism to our cool Sunburst. Here I'm using the Stitch Sun frame to die cut some sticky note cardstock because I wanted a plain circle. I didn't want to have the stitching. I wanted it just plain. And you'll see that that's going to fit perfectly inside that magic iris opening. I'm going to take out my magic messages set, which I love using with magic iris because they're the perfect size. And we're going to do some heat embossing. So I'm going to use my anti-static powder tool, and then we're going to stamp the phrase that says "Hello Sunshine," which is pretty appropriate for our cute little sun theme we have going here. And then we've stamped it in some clear embossing ink, and we can add some white heat embossing powder, and then we're going to heat that up with the heat tool. And I love watching it turn that bright shiny white. Oh, it's so pretty. So now that we have that all done, we're going to start working on our card base, and I'm going to use some of the new textured dot cardstock for this, which I just love because that subtle texture on it is just perfect. And we're going to layer that piece right on. But the first thing I want to do is attach my Hello Sunshine sentiment. So I'm going to open up my magic iris, and I'm going to lay that onto my card base, making sure that it's nice and centered. I'll add some tape runner to the back of that Hello Sunshine, and then I'm going to layer that right inside. I find this the easiest way to add my sentiment to the card. So I'm just going to kind of put that in, push that through the opening, and then now I can push it down onto my card base and make sure it's nice and secure. The next step is to adhere our add-on with the magic iris on top. So we're going to add some foam squares to those outside edges, and then tape runners to the stabilizers only, because we want to make sure that our mechanism is still going to work and not have any adhesive in the way. We can peel up the liner paper on that foam and then line that right up with our Hello Sunshine sentiment, securing it down onto the card base. Now, how cool is this? We can move our magic iris tab, and I just love it so much. Now, this card honestly looks really great as is, but I wanted to play with my sun. So I took the outside in sun this time, and we die cut that from some sticky note cardstock, and we took out some more of those puffy clouds and the simple puffy cloud frames. We die cut a bunch of those as well, and we're going to start to layer all of these pieces. This is a recreation of a card by Yanea that was just so gorgeous I had to make one just like it. Hers was originally not a magic iris, and so I took the same idea but translated it into a magic iris. So I love that you can take cards that you've created and kind of step them up with this cool interactive element if you'd like. So you can see I'm layering on some of the more solid clouds and then those cloud frames, and I really love the mix and match of the two, especially because it allows us to see that really cool inked sunburst texture. Then I'm going to add some foam squares to the back of my sun and layer that on. And I love that the opening of the sun, the sunburst, the magic iris add-on, and the magic iris are all the same so that I can mix and match all of these together. Now, last but not least, we're going to add some cute little elements that I just love that Yanea did. And she took some lawn trimmings twine and she tied a little bow in it. And I love the lawn trimmings because it's made out of hemp, so it's really sturdy and it really holds its bow shape. So I'm going to trim off my ends and then add a little glue dot behind the knot of the bow and secure that onto the sun. And that really brings the turquoise from the card base out onto the front of the card. Then I'm going to take the whole thing and layer it onto a standard size card base that's 5.5 by 4.25. And the last finishing touch is to add a little sparkle. So I'm going to take out some sequins and lay them onto my card, kind of just playing around with some of the placements. And then we can pick up each of the sequins and add just a little drop of the glue tube behind it to secure them in place. And now the card is all done, and how fun is this? Oh my gosh, I love it. It's so pretty. I love the white and the light yellow together. I think it's so gorgeous. I had so much fun creating this card and mixing and matching all of these dies in the stamp set together. Next up, we have some gorgeous cards to show you by the design team. And first up, we have a card by Elise. And how cute is this with the little smiley faces on the cloud and the sun? I love it so much. Next up, we have this cute card by Shari where she put the magic messages on the inside and she's got the paper airplanes on the clouds around, and I just love it. Here, Megan absolutely blew me away by creating a cool swish and pop card using this brand new sun. So as you pull the tab, it reveals a cloud and the rest of the sentiment. Then this card by Audrey is so pretty. Look at these fiery red and orange colors with those cool suns layered kind of offset with each other. Absolutely gorgeous. Here, Grace created the cutest little shaker card. I love it so much with that cool rainbow in the background. And then this card here by Lynette is so sweet. Look at those smiles and the cute clouds and the word smile, of course, absolutely adorable. Here, Elena created the coolest rainbow ink blended background on the Sunburst backdrop that I just adore. And then this is the card by Tammy that inspired us to make our shaker card today. It's just so happy and fun. Here, Lynette shows us that you don't necessarily have to use the sun with that Sunburst backdrop. She actually layered it behind her coffee mug. And Elena had a similar idea and layered it behind that cute little Easter basket die. How sweet is that? This card by Shari was so fun from the video. I love those cool inked rays. And then here's another card by Shari that's so pretty using strips of cardstock along the rays of the Sunburst backdrop. Mindy created some super cute, bold, and bright cards here with her cool starry backdrop and a rainbow inked pattern and some awesome Oliver stitched ABCs for a bold greeting across her suns. And then here, Elise had a similar idea, but she used the new scripty bubble sentiments across this cool sunburst backdrop. I just love these clean and simple cards with it. And this card by Letitia is so pretty. I love how she layered and offset those suns. Absolutely gorgeous. And then this is that awesome scene card that inspired me to make mine today by Audrey. Oh, I love it so much. I cannot wait to see how you guys use these products and how you mix and match all of these suns and sunbursts and magic iris. Oh my gosh, we cannot wait to see it. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Bye.